Um bom dia, bem-vindas e bem-vindos à nossa live sobre a Brasil Germany Fintech Tour, um programa virtual de imersão de fintechs brasileiras no mercado alemão, que está sendo organizado pela Embaixada do Brasil em Berlim, no âmbito do Programa de Diplomacia da Inovação do Itamaraty, em parceria com o Ministério Federal de Economia e Energia da Alemanha, com a Associação Brasileira de Fintechs, ABFintechs, com a Germany Trade and Invest e com o Ambiente de Inovação Tech Quartier. E que conta também com um apoio valiosíssimo da Apex Brasil, da Invest São Paulo e também da Associação Brasileira de Startups. Eu sou o Pedro, sou responsável pelo setor de Ciência, Tecnologia e Inovação da Embaixada do Brasil em Berlim e serei o host de hoje. Nós reunimos aqui os principais executores, né, do programa e vamos conversar aí num bate-papo multilinguístico em inglês e português sobre a programação da eTour e sobre o cenário de fintechs da Alemanha. Teremos mais ou menos meia hora de intervenções e apresentações, e na segunda metade da live ela será inteiramente dedicada a perguntas e respostas do público. Portanto, vocês podem colocar suas perguntas em português ou inglês, ou se quiser em alemão também, aqui no chat do Zoom ou no YouTube, que os nossos convidados terão todo o prazer de responder. Para dar início à nossa conversa aqui, eu queria convidar o presidente da ABFintechs, o Diego Perez, para suas palavras iniciais. Diego, é com você.
Obrigado, Pedro. É um prazer estar aqui contribuindo para esse evento. Para aqueles que não conhecem, né, que estão acompanhando ao vivo ou que assistiram esse vídeo posteriormente no nosso canal do YouTube, eu sou o presidente da Associação Brasileira de Fintechs, ABFintechs. A associação é um organismo que foi criado em meados de 2016 com a finalidade de organizar o mercado de fintechs no Brasil, colocando em conjunto os empreendedores daquela época na mesma mesa com os reguladores para discutir avanços regulatórios necessários no mercado de fintech para que isso pudesse crescer, né? Desde então, a gente atingiu recentemente a marca de mais de 460 fintechs associadas, né? O que é bem representativo no Brasil. O Brasil tem perto de 1.000 fintechs, então a gente representa mais ou menos metade das fintechs brasileiras, mas a gente também tem voz ativa para falar pelo mercado como um todo, porque a gente contribui para a formação de novos arcabouços regulatórios, para discussão legislativa, e que vem trazendo bons resultados, como o Open Bank, que a gente vem acompanhando aí o sucesso da iniciativa, o PIX, né, o Sandbox regulatório, que são iniciativas promovidas pelo governo, mas com a contribuição do mercado, e muito disso com a participação da ABFintechs, né? Além disso, a ABFintechs acabou ganhando também uma projeção internacional nos últimos anos, especialmente pela atuação das fintechs brasileiras, não só localmente, mas globalmente também. A gente tem algumas fintechs brasileiras que têm atividades em outras regiões do mundo, no sudeste da Ásia, na Europa, nos Estados Unidos, até na América Latina. Tem alguns cases bem emblemáticos, como o próprio Nubank, né, que já está expandindo as suas atividades para Colômbia, México, Argentina, mas que também possui escritórios de desenvolvimento e engenharia na própria Alemanha, né? A gente tem algumas outras fintechs com operações na Europa também, associadas nossas também, por exemplo, a Safe, né, que tem operação no Reino Unido. A gente tem a Olivia, que tem operação também na Irlanda. Enfim, esse fenômeno das fintechs brasileiras tem ganhando muito espaço, e o Brasil, por mais que seja um país de dimensões continentais, com mais de 200 milhões de pessoas e com mais de quase 1.000 fintechs, a gente também está encontrando espaço para desenvolver essas atividades em outras regiões do mundo. Em razão disso, a ABFintechs vem costurando acordos com entidades irmãs de outras regiões também. Então, a gente tem memorandos assinados, né, ou em fase de assinatura com associações, por exemplo, de Hong Kong, Singapura, Irlanda, Israel, Estônia. A gente também tem acordos com Emirados Árabes, Suíça, Índia, né? São regiões do mundo onde esse fenômeno fintech também vem acontecendo e a troca de informações entre as duas regiões se faz muito importante. Mas não só informações por informações, mas também a promoção de oportunidades, né? O que a gente vai conversar aqui hoje, o que será apresentado aqui hoje, tem como um objetivo maior permitir que as fintechs, não só as associadas, mas as fintechs que façam parte do ecossistema brasileiro, também possam considerar outras regiões do mundo para expandir as suas atividades, para expandir a sua atuação, montar um escritório, mesmo que inicialmente de maneira remota, na Alemanha, né, por exemplo, contratando pessoas sediadas localmente, fechando negócios com a região, obtendo licenças para operar serviços financeiros nesses locais. Então, é muito importante que a gente consiga entregar essa proposta de valor para as fintechs brasileiras, para que elas também possam considerar outras regiões do mundo e, quando elas tomarem essa decisão, contar com o apoio da ABFintechs para isso, né? Então, eu fico muito feliz aqui em ter pessoas como o Dominik e o Kim, que vão falar aqui um pouco sobre essas oportunidades, como estabelecer o seu negócio nesses países, na Alemanha especificamente, né, nas regiões que eles habitam, para que a gente também possa entregar isso para o nosso associado. Então, eu passo de volta para você, Pedro, para que você possa conduzir a nossa conversa, fazer o switch to English, né? E a gente seguir aqui no bate-papo, mas eu vou acompanhar aqui até o fim para também ficar de suporte, caso alguém queira entender um pouco mais como iniciar essas atividades por meio da ABFintechs.
Perfeito, Diego. Muito obrigado por essas palavras. As you said, I will now switch to English. And I have the pleasure now to hand over the floor to Dr. Kim Zietlow. I hope I got the pronunciation right, Kim. He's the Director for Trend and Innovation Scouting of Germany Trade and Invest, GTAI. Kim, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Pedro. Thank you, Diego, for the introductory words. Yeah, hello from Berlin. Good morning. I mean, here it's afternoon already, but yeah, I'm very happy to be here today to join you and to welcome you and send you many greetings from Germany and introduce you a little bit to the opportunities that we have here for fintechs from Brazil. Today, I will not talk about the German market because we have an expert with us today. He will cover that part. But I quickly want to tell you a little bit about the organizations that I work for, which which show great support for companies like you. So I work for Germany Trade and Invest. We are the economic development agency of the Federal Republic of Germany, which means well, we work on behalf of the Ministry of Economy and Energy in Germany. And our mandate as an organization is to internationalize the German economy. So we support German companies with export promotion. And we support foreign companies, including startups like you, to come to Germany. And we offer free services in terms of information, in terms of market insights, in terms of networks, legal and tax questions, you name it. That's our job. Over the years, we support hundreds of companies, to settle down in Germany. That's why we're very happy, about this program and support here as well. And one part of my job actually and my team is to internationalize the so-called Digital Hub Initiative. And that's actually a project by the Ministry of the Economy in Germany, to build and grow a digital innovation ecosystem in Germany. And this is how it looks like. What you can see on the slide is that the whole initiative is composed of 12 hubs across the whole country, and each hub kind of wears a hat in terms of one vertical. And marked here, in the middle, there's Frankfurt, which is covered by Tech Quartier. And today we have Dominik with us from Tech Quartier, and he will tell you a lot more about that and the fintech angle. When you join this program and finally come to Germany, there are not only market opportunities waiting for you. There's also a network and a community that already exists on the ground, and associations like us that can help you with your market entry. So I can only encourage you to apply to this program, and we'd be very glad to support you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you for your words of introducing GTAI, and also already mentioned the Digital Hub initiative in which Tech Quartier is inserted. I will switch back to Portuguese because now it's my time to talk a little bit about the program itself, about the schedule. Então, vou compartilhar aqui a minha tela. Eu acho que vocês podem ver, né? You can all see. Ok, perfeito. Então, esse é o programa Brasil Germany Fintech eTour, que terá lugar, né, em setembro de 2021, programa virtual, em função das condições atuais, né, ainda da pandemia. Um programa que está dividido em duas fases, né? Duas fases. A primeira, que é o que a gente chama de fase de imersão de mercado, né? Que vai ter lugar entre 13 e 16 de setembro de 2021, para a qual nós estamos selecionando, né, 10 fintechs brasileiras para, então, participarem de um programa de 4 dias, em que terão acesso a palestras, a painéis de debate sobre vários aspectos do sistema de inovação fintech da Alemanha. Ao final dessa semana, a gente então selecionará das 10, 3 fintechs brasileiras que terão então o benefício de poder participar de um programa de soft landing virtual. A gente aqui está indicando o início, né, tentativo em outubro desse ano, ou seja, logo depois da primeira fase. Então, um período de 3 meses de soft landing no Tech Quartier, né? E eu vou falar um pouco mais a respeito, e depois o Dominik vai detalhar um pouco mais. Para a fase de imersão de mercado, na verdade, é um conjunto de palestras, de debates sobre vários aspectos, né? Aspectos de mercado, aspectos aspectos culturais, aspectos regulatórios, legais, e também haverá ao final uma sessão de pitch também junto a investidores e grandes bancos aqui da Alemanha. Então, um programa bastante repleto em que durante 4 dias teremos uma imersão realmente em diferentes facetas, né, do mercado alemão. Então, esse primeiro, que a gente está chamando de Day Zero, né, em que vai ser realmente em português ainda, para esquentar os motores para a programação principal. A gente vai ter, então, uma palestra sobre estratégias de internacionalização. Depois, entramos um pouco mais em detalhe, falaremos sobre parcerias, né, ou seja, vínculos com parceiros locais como uma estratégia de internacionalização e também uma sessão dedicada a questões culturais, diferenças culturais entre a Alemanha e o Brasil, que também é muito importante ter em mente quando uma empresa brasileira pensa em vir para a Alemanha. Depois, a cerimônia de inauguração de abertura, né, seria no dia seguinte, e aqui a gente tem o prazer de contar com o nosso embaixador aqui na Alemanha, Roberto Jaguaribe, também com o comissário alemão para a indústria digital e startups, o deputado federal alemão Thomas Zborek, também vai participar. O Diego também nos honrará com a sua presença na abertura, e também o Dr. Sebastian Schäfer, que é o Managing Director da Tech Quartier. Depois, após isso, uma sessão de 2 horas em que nós aprofundaremos as questões, né, principais do ecossistema alemão de Fintech. Falaremos da Alemanha em geral, mas também dos 2 principais hubs, né, que é Berlim e Frankfurt, como também o Kim indicou na apresentação dele. Então, teremos convidados das 2 cidades que também falarão sobre as características peculiares desses 2 grandes hubs fintechs aqui da Alemanha. No dia 2, que na verdade é o terceiro dia da nossa programação, falaremos de novo de questões culturais, mas com uma visão mais do ponto de vista da cultura empreendedora entre os 2 países. Também serão abordados numa sessão seguinte mecanismos de investimentos, né, de financiamento aqui para startups na Alemanha. Ao final desse dia teremos uma sessão que será a única sessão aberta do programa, ou seja, será aberta ao grande público, em que nós traremos já empresas já bem estabelecidas, tanto alemãs como brasileiras, que atuam nos dois mercados, ou pelo menos têm escritórios nos 2 mercados, né? Temos pela parte da Alemanha a Samap, o N26 e a Mambo, né, que têm escritórios e atuam no Brasil, e como o Diego comentou, o Nubank, o Banco Brasileiro, que tem um escritório de engenharia aqui na Alemanha. Então eles vão compartilhar um pouco da experiência de atuar nos 2 países. Finalmente, no último dia, vamos iniciar o dia com questões legais, regulatórias. Primeiro, questões mais voltadas à questão de abrir, né, qual o processo para abrir uma empresa e expandir para a Alemanha. Questões também de proteção de dados, muito importante aqui no ambiente europeu. E também um quadro geral legal sobre a atuação especificamente de fintechs na Alemanha, né? Também falaremos numa sessão seguinte sobre tendências tecnológicas do mercado fintech aqui na Alemanha, também importante essa perspectiva que será trazida aqui. E daí finalmente teremos a sessão de pitch junto a investidores, bancos aqui na Alemanha. E finalmente teremos daí o anúncio, né, das 3 startups que serão contempladas e daí passarão para a fase, né, de soft landing. A fase de soft landing, aqui eu retirei isso de uma apresentação do Tech Quartier, que é o ambiente de inovação que vai oferecer esse serviço. Basicamente é um soft landing de 3 meses, em que as startups brasileiras poderão se integrar à comunidade, né, de startups do Tech Quartier, ou seja, com investidores, mentores, outras startups, né, e também parceiros estratégicos, ter acesso a serviços, né, de consultoria, serviços de estratégia de negócios, também consultoria legal e regulatória, e também o Tech Quartier, o que é muito interessante, eles oferecem também a possibilidade de se integrar com outros grandes hubs, né? Quer dizer, o Tech Quartier está em Frankfurt, mas por meio do Tech Quartier você consegue também se integrar e acessar stakeholders em outras grandes cidades alemãs, principalmente Berlim, Munich, Colônia e Dortmund, né? Então, esse, assim, em linhas gerais, Esse, então, é a programação da nossa eTour. Eu recordo, então, as nossas startups aqui, que o prazo, né, de inscrição até domingo dessa semana, então até dia 25 de julho. Aqui vocês têm aí o link para o formulário. E estamos à disposição, qualquer dúvida. Estou colocando aqui o nosso e-mail, né, do setor de ciência e tecnologia, aqui da Embaixada. Qualquer dúvida com relação ao formulário, qualquer questão, por favor, não hesitem em entrar em contato conosco. Mais uma vez, obrigado, e I will now stop here, and I have the pleasure now to hand over the floor to Dominik. Dominik, it's up to you now.
Thank you, Pedro, for the opportunity to speak, and also hello from Frankfurt and from Germany to all the fintechs and all the interested ones that are currently looking. I hope you can see my screen now, so we can start the presentation.
Yes.
That's fortunate. Thank you very much. So, short to my person, I'm Dominik Zborek, and I'm a government and public sector affairs manager at TechQuartier, and I'm coordinating our international relations and therefore also our relations to hubs throughout all over the world. But let's start and dive a bit deeper into the German and European ecosystem and what it implies. So first, an overview of some numbers. So in general, we have in Germany, from the status of January of this year, around about 712 fintechs in Germany that are distributed throughout all over the country. Mainly, one of the biggest center points is Berlin with 38%. Followed up by Frankfurt, Munich, and Hamburg with different strengths and different sector strength. 77% of fintechs have a cooperation with an established firm in Germany as of the latest numbers. And that implies what we also, we're all basically working on all together in Germany in the individual ecosystems, but also throughout Europe. And that's the cooperation part. So if you're coming, for example, to TechQuartier, and I will talk a bit more about TechQuartier in a second, it's all about how can we get you in touch with the right counterpart? How is it fitting to each other? Where are some opportunities to be lifted? So if there's a common narrative, it is basically cooperation or to evaluate where there is room for it. 74% of the startups, specifically the fintechs here, rely on a scalable business model. It's also something interesting. And 520 corporations have been fostered between fintechs and corporates throughout the last years. So I think it's quite an interesting number to digest here. If you have any questions on these, feel free to come back to me afterwards. There is, as also implied by Kim already, there are different ecosystems to think strength in the individual cities and ecosystems that will surround them. Berlin is the biggest startup ecosystem in Germany, and it's renowned for its startup culture, for its international flair, for a lot of talent. It has still the most and the biggest funding rounds regarding fintech and in general as well. And it has a slightly higher share on B2C fintechs. So as you will see shortly, a couple of renowned German or European fintechs are stemming from Berlin. Most of them have a B2C focus. Frankfurt represents, of course, a more established financial services economy, with basically being the European financial hub, at least on the continent. Most banks have their seat here. The German Stock Exchange is located here. We have a higher share of B2B fintechs here. That's due to the nature of the Frankfurt-Rhein-Main region having more of a B2B focus. Also an international community, and as we'll see shortly, more a focus on, and it's also home to more of the supervisory and regulatory institutions on the German and on the European level. As well, then we have Munich, which is very, very much known for its insurance sector and also for insurance startups. and is home to many investors. We have a lot of funds that are sitting in Munich. And in Hamburg, it's a lot more closer to the real economy. There's a huge logistics department, of course, naturally due to the harbor. And therefore, a lot of trade finance and logistic fintechs are also located there. Also the later two ones, also upcoming ecosystems as well. As Kim already mentioned, we have the DE Hub network. I won't spend too much time going into depth here. Just want to point out it's also something that seemingly at the first you think, okay, it's a bit scattered throughout Germany and throughout Europe, but the common narrative is here that it's really about, it's about cooperation. And we really believe deeply that new innovation and new progress not only stems from different silos where you basically just evolve over time, but where these silos interact and intersect, that's where it's really becoming interesting. That's why the DE Hub initiative is a huge help here, because crossing these individual sector strength and ecosystems for something new, that's what we try to foster. And that's where also innovation and new opportunities coming from. And we know from research that most successful startups or scale-ups, they never stop innovating. And the companies that start to rely on their past successes, they sooner or later will be disrupted by a new newcomer then. So all of this basically just should show that there are strengths throughout Germany, and there's different regions that have their strength. But in the end, it's all interrelated, and there's no problem to get into touch with another ecosystem, another focus hub, or another expert or startup throughout all of Germany. Some of the more well-known German fintechs here, without going into depth with all of them, some of you might have heard, some of you didn't. One of the biggest, of course, being N26, which is basically the all-in-one banking solution that's or neobank coming from Germany. Then we have also Trade Republic and Clark, which are more to B2C focused companies or B2B2C focused companies. Trade Republic being the biggest free broker in Germany and stockbroker, and Clark being a digital insurance broker or overview app. And then we have Mambu, Solaris Bank, and Raisin, who currently is merging with Deposit Solutions, which are more the B2C sector. And there it's a lot about more, okay, how can they find the right counterpart for them to do business with, to cooperate, and to evolve. For example, Raisin Deposit Solutions. Raisin is from is a Berlin company. Deposit Solutions is a Frankfurt company, originally from Frankfurt. So you see there's different companies throughout the whole country that are working together, merging, or just trying to progress in a new field if it's very innovative. By the way, we can send you around the slides, if you will, afterwards. Then let's take a look at more at Europe, and very similar to what we showed you on the national level, we have also all over Europe. So there is a network of I think it's already 12 fintech hubs now all over Europe that decided to work closely and to interact and exchange opportunities. From, for example, Tech Quartier in Frankfurt, or Copenhagen or Fintech Copenhagen, or Holland Fintech, Finland, Fintech Scotland, Beehive in Belgium, who are currently merging to create a bigger corporation or bigger organization for aimed at scale-ups. The Luxembourg House of Financial Technology, Insomnia in Spain, Portugal Fintech, or Le Village in France. Or Fintech District in Mailand in Italy, who are also very active. These are very well and renowned actors throughout Europe. And you see there is collaboration also happening. So there is not one joint network you can join, but if you join, for example, Tech Quartier, you have the opportunity to access the network of all of these fintechs, as well as you will if you would be the winner of the soft landing of the whole program, and then gain access to Tech Quartier throughout the soft landing program. Just one more remark on the European ecosystem and the German ecosystem. Here are some of the biggest or the most important players you should know. You also having very, very close to yourself if you're coming to the European ecosystem. In Frankfurt, for example, there's located the European Central Bank, which is basically the supervisor of the financial markets and who's deciding on the monetary policy. You have the EIOPA, which is basically the European Insurance and Occupational Pensions Authority. It's the Insurance Supervision Authority, if you will, also located in Frankfurt. And you have other authorities as well located in other cities throughout Germany. But for example, as well, what BaFin is one of the most active players in the field of regulation and supervision alongside the European Central Bank. As every member state in Europe has its own supervisory regulation authority, which is working closely with the European Central Bank, but it's also leading some topics, driving some topics. And if you were to establish your shop in Germany, then you would most likely work with BaFin at some point, or it would be good to have a contact in there, and that's what we can also facilitate. Then more in the way, in the light of associations that can become very, very handy in the end. One is the Bitkom, which is Germany's biggest digital association, which is representing companies in the digital field all over the country, including a lot of startups or more established players as well. And there's also a vertical about banking, financial service, and fintech, which is basically providing with thought leadership and the latest insights. And then a bit more general, but nevertheless relevant, is the German Startup Association, which is basically being the voice for startups and also fintechs to the national government and the EU level, and which is also providing with up-to-date information about the different developments in different fields. So this is just very small view about the ecosystem here, but that's some of the most relevant players. To give you a bit of an overview, basically what TechBot here is all about, just very briefly, so you know what you're heading to and what network you might join if you're interested and if you win the competition. TechBot here itself is located in Frankfurt, and which you can see some numbers here. Is quite an interesting ecosystem, but more importantly for you is that we have more than 420 startups in our community, and more than 30%, like a third, have their headquarters abroad, not even in Germany. And we have close ties with 17 international universities, with, for example, also MIT, with Harvard Business School, and so on, to have some exchange of thoughts and thought leadership as well. A good talent pool as well, with a talent from over 50 countries, people from over 50 countries. Over 19 languages are spoken at TQ's team alone. In the whole community, I think it's close to every language you can imagine. Portuguese most certainly being one of them. And then we have more than 20 startup hubs and associations worldwide where we interrelated with. You've seen a fraction of the fintech ones already. Just to give you an overview of basically what kind of startups in our community. I won't go over all of them here right now. It's only to see we're pretty sector agnostic. Of course, it's being a very, very big focus on B2B sectors, but we really believe in that idea of intersections and that these are fostering innovation. But of course, also you have your strength in a certain field, and that's also why we are the FinTech Hub in the German Digital Hub Initiative, because of course we have the partners in that field that are relevant to develop joint projects, corporations for the startups and corporates together, or new use cases if possible. One of them, for example, we're currently working on is the financial big data cluster, which is to bring together different data pools from different sources and make them accessible, while at the same time remaining compliant with privacy and data laws. And that's something we try to do with our community, with the intersection of universities, corporates, startups, and investors, to the best of all knowledge that are liking. I hope that you've gained some insight now about what we do and how the German ecosystem is tailored. it's most certainly very, very few time to talk about the whole landscape, but feel free to approach me via email, LinkedIn, or any other channels if you're interested in getting in touch or learning more about the German or European ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Perfect, Dominik. Thank you. Thank you very much for this overview of the German fintech ecosystem, and also going a bit more into detail also about what Tech-Quartier does and all the services it offers. And I'm glad to hear that Portuguese is part of the languages that are spoken in, and let's hope that we can bring more Portuguese into to Tech-Quartier as well. I will now open for questions from the audience. And while we wait for questions, I'll take the benefit of being the moderator, and I will pose the first one. Maybe that's for Dominik, and Kim, if you want to jump in, please also feel free. This week, The Economist has published an article which is titled the Funding Frenzy. So basically highlighting the exponential increase of fintech investment around the world, especially in the past 2 quarters or first half of this year. So on the other hand, the article also mentions that the risk of fintechs, precisely because many of the investors are incumbent traditional financial institutions, or because some fintechs are becoming large financial platforms. So the article also mentions about the risk of fintechs losing that initial impetus to defy the establishment, or the established traditional financial sector. So how do you see both aspects? Do you see it also happening in Germany or in Europe? I mean, increase of the investment, and also that risk of, let's say, fintechs being engulfed by the traditional financial sector?
I mean, surely we've seen 1.5 years, the past 1.5 years have not been the most usual parts. I mean, a lot of payment fintechs all over the world got a huge boost because of most suddenly there was a need now for contactless payment. And then, of course, these kind of fintechs then, of course, need more funding, or they are growing a very, very large scale, which has not been anticipated. I think that's what we're seeing. And at the same time, in Germany, at least, we're seeing last year was funding-wise not the strongest year, quite the opposite, honestly. But afterwards, now this year has been a lot stronger. It's basically like you've been loading your wristband and now you're firing off, right? You're holding off, and now basically some of that is coming back. But I think it's just a normal process you see in a lot of the economic sectors, that after that slump of last year, you see some quicker recovery in some sectors. But we will only see if that's a sustainable funding frenzy, I would say, beginning of next year, or let's see, half or a year after the Corona crisis. Nevertheless, what you're saying is also that a lot of these bigger fintechs, they are becoming huge platforms, and they are agglomerating a lot of the power they initially promised to disrupt from traditional banking industries. So, but I would go a step further, and some of these fintechs, of course, they have become themselves corporates, right? With corporates' interest and so on, everything that goes along. The only thing what you can do is, of course, you have the competitive side and you have the regulatory side to tame that. But on the other hand, we believe that you have networks that are open, right? Semi-open networks where there is a bit level of trust, where you can then cooperate with each other. So there was never, at least not in our eyes, there was never the notion us versus them, startups versus corporates at every level. It's very much more complex, and it really depends on the individual outcome. I mean, what we see for most startups that want to initially disrupt and don't have the customer base, they will fail if they don't manage to get to that customer base sooner or later. At the same time, corporates, they fail if they don't have the speed and the agility to provide new business models or to provide more value to the customer. But there is this room in between where it's a win-win situation without the one basically eating the other. And that entails established fintech corporates, if you will, scale-ups that have been around for some time. And we've seen that some of these fintechs that are more established, they become a lot more, how you say, less innovation friendly after some time, because some of the founders think 5 or 10 years in the game, they are innovative by definition, and they forgot to innovate or have the processes to innovate down the road. So it's interesting to see some of the older fintechs that have been growing that are now a lot less innovative in some fields than, for example, established corporates who have had these innovation labs or have this innovation units since some years. So you see, it's not an easy answer to give most certainly, but I would say in short, we see a lot basically run-up effects from the Corona crisis, and we will still see them down the road. And on the other hand, it's all depending on the individual business model. I don't believe there's only an us versus them mentality. It depends on the individual business model, and every fintech at some point should consider cooperating with some established player if it makes sense to their business model.
Perfect, Dominik. I don't know, Kim, you want to jump in, or that's fine?
Yeah, just one quick notion here. Dominik, explained, quite eloquently, the big funding rounds that we've seen over the last couple of months, and I totally agree here. But on the other hand side, this doesn't mean that the potential is gone. For other startups in the sector, for other fintechs in insurtechs. It actually only shows that a couple of mature fintechs grew to a certain level, and benefited from the Corona crisis through the e-payment systems and so on. That they were ready for these big funding rounds. Still, when you look at the sector at large, only in Germany, and when you start in Germany, you can also look at the European level. There is still a lot of work to do. And traditional banks are still lagging so far behind to what the larger fintechs can offer. So the cake is not eaten up; it's not divided. The cake for fintechs is massively growing, and this will go on over the next decade at least. That's why we can only encourage other fintechs and also from Brazil to come over, and try it out. There's the race is still ongoing here, and I can only stress what Dominik says. The partnership with traditional players is very important. That you work in collaboration, and this is also one thing that we can support, or we support here through this initiative. We bring the startups together with the corporates, together with the banks and for fintechs, to lift the potential together.
Perfect, Kim. Thank you. As we were talking about funding, and I think there's an interesting question here from the audience, specifically to that. So, can Brazilian fintech startups find good funding opportunities in Germany? And how is the venture capital landscape in Germany compared to other European countries? Who's going to take that?
I guess, Dominik, you're mute.
You can take that, Kim, if you want to. Otherwise, I can take it as well.
Okay, let me start with a more public perspective here. And then maybe you can just add from the private sector. Yeah, so that is quite an established funding landscape in Germany, especially through public institutions, through public banks, through funding schemes from ministries on the national level, but also on a regional level, and even on a communal level in different cities. But when it comes to public funding, it usually means that you need a legal entity in Germany, and this applies to every company, all over the world. This is the only restrictions that you have when it comes to public funding. But when it comes to private funding, now when we talk about the VC landscape, that's of course is a completely different picture. And of course, you have access to German VCs, European VCs that are active in Germany. But of course, it makes most sense to do that to gain the visibility and gain the attraction. When you're on the ground, when you're active here, and get the right context over here. Maybe Dominik, you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what you already said, there is, I think there is quite some public funding you can get. There is now some funding schemes that are aiming at basically leveraging what private sectors are doing. So there are schemes from KfW, for example, or from other public banks, that if you get some funding from an investor, that they double it the same amount to the same conditions, for example. So really, because we know that especially in the scaling phase, there are some we need some international investors, or we need some more let's say firepower. That's why the public funding is coming in handy, and I think that's a scheme that's very interesting and very intriguing to startups that are looking into scaling. At the same time, you have what's also been emerging in the last 2 to 3 years, I would say, is venture capital from corporates. So CVC money, where it's all about, okay, this is a strategic investment. We don't want to buy it completely because we don't want to basically suck it up into the whole corporate just yet, but we want to cooperate, and we deliberately give some investment money to that startup to build that up because we trust in the technology, or it's an interesting use case, or it's just more in the sense of beyond banking, for example, right? Beyond the core business models of that corporate, and it's intriguing for them to evaluate this. That's something they want to delve deeper in. And we've seen, besides classical incubators, accelerators around that topic, now a lot more CVCs emerging that are especially tackling startups that are beyond the core business model of the corporate, and that's, I think, also very, very interesting, at least from our standpoint, to see that's because that's another level of cooperation that we'll be seeing a lot more in the near future, I think.
Yeah, one quick note here. This is just scratching on the surface of what's possible in terms of funding. There's actually a dedicated slot in the soft lending program with actual financing and funding experts from GTAI, a colleague of mine, but also from an external source, talking specifically about these opportunities and how you as a foreign fintech can access them.
Perfect, wonderful. Thank you, Kim, Dominik. Now questions are popping up here. So one here from Anna. I would like to hear from Dominik, how do the foreign fintechs start in the German market? Do they open GmbH and hire locally and then start prospecting clients? So what's the typical, let's say, legal and bureaucratic procedure to start being active in the German market?
Yeah, sure, and thanks for that question. Short disclaimer: I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an expert on that field, so I can only tell from my experience. But usually, there are several steps, right? If you're delving into the market, so most startups, they are First, in non-corona times, they are basically placing someone in that individual ecosystem or in the individual city and seeing, okay, do I get in touch? Do I get contacts? Do I get introductions? Warming up basically with that new market. Then they usually start to placing a team around 3 to 5 people there and have some operations already there without having an entity then. And then basically once you're really starting up and want to get some funding, get some more corporations and so on, that's where you can basically set up these individual, more formally your shop there with creating a GmbH, a UG, or what basically the right scheme would be then there. But that's nothing you have to do at the first day, right? That's not something you have to do at the first day, while at the same time, it's not a bad thing to do it as soon as possibly as you basically have the decision that you want to get into that market. Why is that the case? I think a lot of German clients, if they see a formally instituted organization in Germany, they will have more trust to than a foreign organization where maybe they don't even know what kind of organization that is. But that's especially what GTIE, what the soft landing program and other are basically helping with, to make that as seamless as possible. And it's not as hard as it may seem to set up this organization in Germany. It's a process that's involves some specific steps. But I would say as soon as there's the decision to get into that market, you should envision doing that, but there's no need to do that on day one.
Absolutely. I can only agree to what Dominik says. And just a quick note here. I know that the German bureaucracy can be a pain, and even as Germans, we know that. But that's why we are here for you. To help you, navigate, through bureaucracy for free, and in the end, it's basically just a process, and if you know how to manage it, and get through it, you won't face any actual problems. And also, it may take couple of days, couple of weeks longer than in other countries, but it's not more expensive.
And one thing to add, maybe
yes.
One thing to add, Pedro, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Yes, if you're setting up an organization in one of the European member states, it's also, you can operate all over Europe, right? And you can even, if you're interested, you can set up an organization, a French organization, a Spanish organization in Germany as well, if that's something you're more interested into. But the European organization makes sense at some point.
Yes, that was good comment, because that's precisely links to another question that came up here, precisely concerning Europe as a whole. And for Brazilian fintech aiming at exploring the European market as a whole, why would specifically Germany be a good entry point? So now maybe I'm putting you against the other European countries.
Kim, you want to go first and I hop in then?
Yeah, sure. Of course, I have to promote Germany here, as the #1 market. This is my job here. This is what our organization does. No, but besides that, of course, there's the market power. Germany is the largest, country in Europe. Germany is, geographically in the middle. Plus, the banking scene is quite developed. That's on the one hand side, and also the startup scene is quite developed. I mean, you still can go to the UK, you can go to London, but in terms of language, you can find the right people speaking English, fluently in Germany, especially in this industry, now that we know that the UK is outside of the European Union, there's another reason, to aim at, Central Europe, and especially Frankfurt. On the other hand side, if you set, your shop up in Germany, it's quite easy, to access the neighboring markets. Of course, you can go to, for instance, Lisbon, or to Portugal. That might be easier for you in terms of language, but you're quite far away from the actual hotspots from your potential clients.
Yeah, I would only add there on the client one. I mean, in the end, it's if you're going to a foreign country, you're seeking either clients, corporations, or funding, right? That's or maybe talents. That could also be the case, but mostly you're basically, if you're setting a shop up there, you want to minimize the amount of time you need to put in and maximize the outcome. And I think therefore Germany is one of the biggest economies, as Kim said, and has the best in continental Europe to start out. Especially, for example, if you're looking at infrastructure, we have in Frankfurt, for example, the central internet node, where you can, depending on your business model, of course, might be also the case that your business model requires you to set up your shop in France or in Spain. That of course is up to you. But for most fintechs, it will make sense to have a very good infrastructure IT-wise. And for example, most of the cloud computing is happening also in Frankfurt or in Germany as well. And as well, if you're regulatory-wise, if you set up your shop in Germany, most of the other European countries will be trusting your organization a lot more than basically if you do it in some other country. To some extreme, if you say you set up your shop in a very small country that has not a huge regulatory authority, then it might be giving you some more headaches if you're moving to a bigger country. Of course, we're here to basically navigate these regulatory aspects, and there are experts here to help you out there. But let's say it like that: Germany has the image that it's pretty hard in regulation, and I think it's to some extent it's overstated, but to some other extent it's pretty easy to get into that regulation because it's pretty transparent what you need to do and when you need to do it. And in the end, then that's basically a huge benefit and let's say a quality sign for the other European countries or worldwide countries if you've gone through that process. And the regulatory authorities have moved a lot in the past years to make it more friendly for fintechs, to make it more friendly for startups in the early stages, to not need to comply to the same regulations, for example, like huge banks or financial institutions. So that's, I think, one of the huge benefits as well. And one of the last ones I already mentioned in the presentation is you have a very good and you're very, very near to the authorities. So the European Central Bank is working on a digital euro, right? We know that now since the last couple of press releases. They are sitting in Frankfurt, right? They are sitting in the heart of Europe as well. You have you're very, very close, and if you're in Germany, to Brussels, if you want to the European authorities, and so on and so on. So I think from an infrastructure point, from access to regulation and clients point, that's one of the biggest levers you can get to.
Perfect. Well, I must say you did a really very good job in advertising Germany. Thank you.
If you let me, okay, perfect. I think there is one question here that you may have skipped. It's from Silvia. She asked it about a fintech subsector that you think would Germany welcome startup from abroad. And just to add a comment, here in Brazil, as a state of the market, we have a very representative sector, which is digital payments and also digital banks. But now there's a new subsector emerging, which is banking as a service. It's infrastructure for not only financial institutions, but also another industries that wish somehow to operate fintech services here in Brazil. So regarding this question, what is the subsector that you may highlight it's more affordable or it's more welcoming in Germany in this aspect?
I think that's a hard question to answer, and I think there is no correct answer to that, because I think a lot of the challenges or issues are more focusing on technology solutions or on solutions as a whole and less on sectors. And there may be payment solutions that are very good and will have an easy time going into the German market or the European market, Well, there's other payment solutions where there is already an established player, and it's hard to say, right? So it's hard to say payment solutions is a general sector where you should move into. I mean, everything around embedded finance, personalized payment platforms, and so on, that's a general trend in the financial service industry, as well as moving more to customer-centric value-added portfolios, right? So basically more having that view, okay, what is the real value that can be delivered to the customer, and how can established corporates and startups, for example, work together to increase that value? That's some of the issues that are driving the whole financial services industry, right? That's not something specific to the German or European market in general. But of course, everywhere where you have an established financial center, there is a lot around digitizing, a lot about APIs, open banking. That is at the core of the topics, but that doesn't mean that other solutions are not interesting. And I would say every technology that has a value added and is not in a very in a field where there is already a lot of established players will have an easy time finding corporations or finding counterparts in Germany if there's a value they can add.
Perfect. So when it comes to competitive advantage in the German market for foreign startups and specifically Brazilian ones, I think it comes down to the specific technology being used and how well and how innovative this technology or the business model is implemented by the fintechs and startups, right? So, well, I think we are now on top of the hour. Actually, I think we are already some minutes past. So I will, and since we don't have any more questions, so I will maybe give the floor just quickly for final words of our guests here. So maybe starting with you, Kim.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Pedro, for this opportunity, and to not only to speak here today, but also to be part of the FinTech eTour happening in September. It's fantastic, to see all this interest from Brazilian fintechs, and we're very happy, to support you here, and hope we can encourage more of you to apply to the program and then actually work with you.
Wonderful, Kim. Thank you very much. Dominik?
Yeah, I hope there are not the famous last words here to say, and we will have more opportunities to speak to each other. But I can only encourage you to delve into the networks, to delve into it. It's very easy to do the first step, and the program, the eTour program, is, I think, a very good opportunity to have someone who is basically taking you to some extent by the hand and helping you to get into that ecosystem. And afterwards, you can still decide whether this is an opportunity you want to go deeper into or not, and see if the German or European market is something you want to work on. But nevertheless, we're always open for discussions. Feel always free to get in touch. No false hesitations here, and no false excuses to do the step if you're trying to procrastinate here.
Great, Dominik. Thank you very much. Diego, palavras finais.
Claro. First, I would like to thank Dominik and Kim for the presence and for sharing this amazing opportunity to our members. And I would like to highlight that it's very important for us to have the presentations, if you could share with us. So it's easier for our team to cherry picking the best one for the program as well. And we can promote alongside our members. So thank you again. It was inspiring to talk to you about these opportunities. E para os amigos aqui que estão acompanhando, a gente fica à disposição. O prazo para inscrição no programa se encerra dia 25, que é domingo agora. Então é muito importante que vocês façam as inscrições dos interessados nos próximos dias. É um formulário simples, né? Não tem tanta burocracia. e é muito importante compreender a importância desse tipo de parceria e oportunidade para que as fintechs brasileiras continuem crescendo bastante. E obrigado, Pedro, pela organização aí, pela oportunidade também.
Excelente, Diego. Muito obrigado. Eu queria agradecer a todos aqui pela participação, agradecer ao nosso público, tanto aqui no Zoom como no YouTube também, pelas ótimas perguntas, e reiterar aí o prazo, né, do dia 25 de julho para a submissão aí das inscrições da aplicação, né, para o programa. Estamos aqui do lado da Embaixada também, disponíveis para eventuais perguntas, questões. A gente colocou aqui no chat o nosso e-mail, mas também acompanhe as nossas publicações no LinkedIn, também, né, no Facebook, e aí vocês também terão acesso a todo tipo de informação. Thank you, Kim, Dominik, again for your time, brilliant presentations. E, bom, nos vemos. Muito obrigado. Até logo.